you shouldn't not do something because you hate the way it was done before. Oof. Instead, do it your own way.
Erin, I am so excited for this conversation. I love you and your energy, and thank you so much for making time to be with me and the happy engineers out there. This is awesome.
I could be more excited to engineer with you.
We're going to engineer something. I think it will be fantastic. So there is an absolutely brilliant GIF on your website that we must start with, because I happen to be a dancer. I did ballroom, Latin, swing, dance competitively in college, and those who follow the show and me know that already. And here's Erin, this CEO on stage in a GIF of you doing some incredible dancing. And I loved the quote that was on your site around this, that you hate dancing where you're supposed to dance, but you love to dance where you're not supposed to. So Erin, can you please explain what in the world is going on with dancing Erin in that GIF?
Yeah, well, two things. One, that was taken from a leadership offsite that we led back when I was the CEO of Payflex. And so we're prepping for this 2.5-day leadership event. We had a leadership company. And as we're prepping, they're like, well, you're the CEO, you're going to do the opening, and then we're also going to have you close it. And I was like, yeah. Like, I got this. This is my jam. I love energizing. I love speaking, etc. Totally got it. But I could tell they kind of wanted me to prepare. So I did. I prepared the opening, not a script. I never script, but I put some thought into it and had sort of an arc, and that was great. And then they said, well, also the ending. I said, well, I can't prep the ending. You got to wait, see, right? You got to see what happens. Like, it's a build up. They said, well, we have an idea for you. And they had sent a couple weeks earlier, they had sent this video. It's you might've seen it, the Dancing Man video. It's got millions of views on YouTube. It's this guy at a concert, and he's all of a sudden starts dancing, and then everybody else starts dancing. And I can't remember who did it, but somebody wrapped sort of like this leadership message around it, like something about followers of the lone nut. And it was this whole like leadership-y, like people follow others.
Sure, yeah.
So fast forward, it's the day before the event. They come into town. It's like 4:00. We're kicking it off that night. We sit in this office. There's 5 of us crammed in this office. And they're like, okay, Erin, do you also have your closing prepared? And I was like, well, roughly, but I want to wait to see. And they said, well, what about the video we sent you? And I was like, oh yeah, the video you sent me, that's great. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do what he did. I'm not going to show the video. I'm going to dance and then get everybody else to dance. And they were like, well, have you watched it? Because it's got this really good message over it. And I was like, okay. I said, let's pull it up again. So we pull up this laptop and they start playing it. And I swear I only could make it like 10 seconds. And I stopped it. And I said, look, not for nothing, but this guy isn't a leader. He's drunk. Mm-hmm. And the people aren't dancing to follow him. They're drunk too. And the reality is, I want to seek inspiration. Like, I never like to copy what somebody does. I sort of take it, make it my own. And I love, though, the idea of somebody dancing and then other people following. So I'm just going to dance. And I swear to God, Zach, they all, like, including my team member, they all kind of just look at me. And I go, okay, wait, are you worried because A, you think I'm going to make a fool of myself, or B, you think we're going to have this great 2-day event and then I'm going to ruin it by dancing on stage? And they're like, we're not worried about the second one. And I was like, perfect, I'm doing it. So fast forward, we get to the end.
Okay, wait. I love this room, this moment. I can relate to this. If I was one of your 5 team members sitting there listening to you pitch the idea, it's like, our CEO is about to dance on stage in front of all these people and make a fool of herself. I'm not sure if I should recommend or so the right. Protection instinct. And so I'm kind of curious, what was the vibe in the room like? Were people just really silent, like didn't want to step on the toes, or were they really saying like, hey, hold on, Erin? Like,
no, they were more silent. They were more like, oh,
are you sure?
Okay. Like, they were like, not like, that's an amazing idea, but they weren't like, don't do it. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, it was 100 people. This is my team. This was my leadership team of the company. Right, these were all my leaders. This isn't like I was doing it in front of investors. So they were just, I think they were worried about,
Sure.
would I look like an idiot? So fast forward, I go through my closing and I said, look, we'll make a slide that has the quote. So you can get your quote in, whatever the quote was on the thing.
Sure.
And then cue the music. Of course, I picked like the music that we walked into on our wedding, like great music. And I knew by the end of that 2 days, like I already knew who was going to first dance because I knew this woman in the front, right? A certain person has energy. She was one of our like service op managers. And sure enough, they put on the music. I start dancing. Not 4 seconds later is she up dancing. Not 10, 15 seconds later, the entire room is dancing. I ended up going down off the stage to each table. Especially some of my older men employees, like the worst dancers ever, but they were doing their best to shimmy. Everybody was up. And when we got done, I remember going over to the leadership company that we worked with, and they're like, oh my God, that was like, it could not have ended better than that. So I tell that story, one, because that is literally the story behind it. And it's such a metaphor for me. Like I don't do this anymore at all, really. But even back in my 20s, if people said, let's go out to the dance club, I would be miserable because when you go to a dance club, guess what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to dance. So then it's like predictable and like you're supposed to do it. Take me to an Irish pub that has like a jukebox in the back and give me a few extra drinks. And by the end, we're like dancing on tables, which has definitely happened before. To me, that is like the best night possible because it's, my son said it best. He's he comes right off of the tree of me. We were down in Orlando this winter. My parents have a place down there and we're not big Disney people. We love water parks, but when we went down there, we hung out, we rode in golf carts, swam, and we were taking a walk one morning. He's actually never been to the Magic Kingdom. My daughter has. And I said something about it, kind of feeling guilty. And he looks at me and goes, no, I don't like organized fun. He's like, that's
I don't like,
I don't want somebody to tell me, like, I want spontaneous. And it's a metaphor for everything. And I think so many people feel that, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, today. But this concept of not doing something, we hear it all the time, don't shit on yourself, not because you should, but not doing stuff that doesn't feel aligned. But the good news is you don't have to do completely different. Like showing that video wasn't totally in alignment with what felt right. But I applied actually what I call the 50% rule. And I like 50%, I kept the concept, then I did it my own way. And that's really where I thrive. And I think that's where so many people can thrive and they can understand that they can actually do it their own way and do it better.
Using that moment maybe as a catalyst to get into the work that you do and how powerful it is in organizations, what is it that you believe, looking back at that dancing and the spark that it created in the room, what is it that makes it work? Is it that anyone could get on stage and just start dancing and it always would happen? Or is there more to the story? And like, could you just maybe pull that out for us? Why does what happened happen in that moment?
Well, so I'll start there and then I'll go backwards. The reason that worked wasn't because of energy. It really was authenticity. I mean, at that point, people knew me as a leader. And by the way, I'm not a dancer. That's a gift that shows 2 seconds. Like I do the worst running man, but I love doing the running man. But it's a connector. My team really felt connection with me because it's not just that I danced, but I danced really crappy. I didn't dance great. It was messy. And just to kind of take a step back, I think for your listeners, I had a great corporate career, but much like most people, it wasn't planned. I didn't come from a small town in northern Michigan girl like you and your wife, and you're not a girl, but I didn't have grand plans to be some big executive. I came into Aetna, which is a great company. And in fact, I think your listeners should know how I started there. I was in college and I was actually in engineering. I was in an engineering program because I was good at math, and that's what you do, right? Like you go into engineering. Of course. I was a paper engineering major at Western Michigan University, which was great until we took a little trip to the paper mill. And then I realized that's not where I wanted to be working.
Wait, that's a specific discipline you could be as a paper engineer?
It's a specific discipline that they have at Western Michigan University. And so I didn't do very well. I think I got my first C ever in my entire life in engineering. And so my sophomore year, I decided to drop out. And it was my sophomore year, and my roommate actually was a junior. So she was in the business college, and she knew, I was just taking classes, which was fine. I was still taking my math classes, taking some of my other core classes. And she comes home from school one day and she like flies in the door like Kramer. And she's like, oh my God, Erin, I found it. I found the career for you. And I was sort of like, okay, Amy, what is it?
What?
She's like,
Sure.
it's high pay, low stress. So I was kind of like, okay,
I'm listening. Yeah.
And she's like, it's called an actuary. And I was like,
oh no. Oh no.
Ooh, that sounds great. Now, this is pre-Google, right? I'm an old fart. So this is 1995. No idea what an actuary was. Couldn't Google it. All I could do was go to the 4th floor of our library and try to find a book on actuaries, which all I found was this 5x7 gray pamphlet that literally just listed the names of companies, the physical address, and the phone numbers of companies that hired actuaries. So that's all I knew. But I was like, high pay, low stress, math, I'm in. So I actually applied for an internship at a couple of companies, including Aetna. I kind of found Connecticut on a map, totally swindled them into hiring me, and started out in that profession. So, not too far off from the engineering crew, the analytical side. I'll tell you, in 3 years, you know what an ASA and an FSA is?
Yeah.
The professional designations, right? I got them in 3 years.
All right.
I attempted 7 actuarial exams. I failed 7 actuarial exams, actually. Didn't pass a one. So, boom. But my story is going somewhere. So even though I failed, the good news is I was in a big company. I had people that took a chance on me. I bobbed and weaved through some assignments and roles that I was highly unqualified to do. And then something happened. I joined the PayFlex organization, which was a company that was acquired by Aetna, had been acquired a year earlier, about 1,000 people. So it was a smaller company relative to the larger enterprise, but a growing industry, health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, that sort of area. And every time somebody would leave from the executive team, they would sort of look around and be like, I don't know, maybe we should give it to Erin. So I think in like 3 years, I took on newer roles, bigger roles, nothing ginormous. And then what happened, Zach, is one day, it was a Friday afternoon, I was working from home. I was like, okay, I glide into the weekend time. And my boss, who was the COO, texts me and he's like, can we talk? And I was like, oh God, what? Okay.
Not on Friday.
Not on Friday. He calls me up and he's sort of like, this is a little heavy for Friday, but I've decided to leave. And I want to know if it's okay if I recommend you as our next COO. And I literally thought for about 2 hot seconds and I was like, no, thank you. What happened in that moment is something that happens to a lot of people. I now call it the compromise calculation. In that moment, super quickly, like a computer, I ran the compromise calculation. And the compromise calculation looks like this. If I take on this role, yes, I'll make more money, I'll have more authority, better title, but there's an anti-correlation with time with my family, my health, and even degrading kind of who I am, right? I'll have to compromise on those things. And it was sort of like, well, I'm making good enough and my stress level is not too bad, but if I have to, and so I said, no, thank you. But we kept talking. And as you can imagine, he sort of talked me into, why don't you think about it over the weekend? I did first what everybody does. I asked a bunch of people, like, what should I do? Right. And guess what? Everybody had a different answer and a different perspective. And in the end, weren't the people that could make the decision. And then this is what hit me, which is so important. I finally stopped to think about, why do I not want to do this? And what I realized is that I was worried about having to enter this club, this executive club. And I always say, in this club, my calendar would overflow. My home life would become a shit show. My personality might even start to blow. Like I was going to have to become somebody that I didn't want to be. I was going to have to become those people that I saw.
Yes.
And then it hit me. You shouldn't not do something because you hate the way it was done before. Oof. Instead, do it your own way. It was really this realization that, yes, maybe some of these people had, on a plane all the time, or maybe they were moving their families and they were leading, with on behalf of emails and becoming sort of this facade. But that's not what had gotten me that far. And that didn't mean that the minute I turned into an executive, I had to do that. It was really with that realization that I was like, I can do this different. And then what happened was, so I was COO, and then a year later, the CEO of the businesses was pulled into another huge enterprise initiative. And so they tagged me as interim CEO, which is a lovely title. They literally were like, you're CEO, but we're recruiting for this to see if there's anybody better. And I was like, awesome. That sounds great.
Appreciate the vote of confidence there.
Feels really good. But I also then realized, well, while they're testing things out, I'm going to test it out too and make sure I want it. I'm really proud to say that I did end up getting the CEO title. It was actually the best thing that could have happened. If I went into an interview process, Zach, I would have lost my resume. There was nothing on my resume that said this should be your next CEO. But instead, I could just focus on, okay, well, they're tied up doing that, which is a pain in the butt, right? I'm going to just do everything I can to kick so much butt. We renegotiated some big deals. We turned some things around. I was showing big progress and, really prove my worth. And then here's the final thing of the story, and then I'll let you lead again. So in 3 years, I'm really proud to say, doing things my own way and not succumbing to this club, not succumbing to sort of the executive presence and all the other crap that I was worried about. In 3 years, we went from previously having flat earnings for like 4 years. We tripled our earnings. Wow. Our employee engagement went up 12 percentage points. And when I announced my retirement, which is a whole nother story, but I decided I was ready to do something new, here's what happened. 75% of the messages kept saying, we're going to miss your authentic leadership. And it wasn't that I was surprised, like, ooh, who, me, authentic? Like, yes, that word fit, but it wasn't a badge I had been pinned with. What I realized as I started to reflect, I had purposely, like, my authenticity wasn't something that was like permission just to be myself so that I could enjoy my job. I had actually purposely been doing things that were authentic to stand out and be different from the other leaders, which allowed me to gain the best talent. It allowed me to keep the best talent. It allowed me to negotiate deals better. It allowed me to gain the attention from executives in quarterly business reviews because I wasn't giving the same spiel like everybody else. And so that's when it all kind of came together. And I hadn't left to start this company, but I want your listeners to hear this. For so long, I assumed this compromise calculation, this as you rise, it is just a given that you have to do more BS, that you have to do more politics, that you have to have less time with your family. When I finally proved that by purposely not doing that, it created this connection and this trust with my employees and my clients and others, that I actually got better success, right? So it wasn't just that, oh, you can do it and have the same, like it was the reverse. Like the more you can buck that crap and do it your own way, the more success. And I was like, oh my God, I got to go teach this.
I love this. And Erin, you could tell the story all day. It's an amazing story. I love listening. But let's come back to that moment, that weekend. Because you said something that I know the engineering leaders that I coach and who are listening go through when they get to that moment of decision and they're making the compromise calculation in their mind and they go ask everybody for advice. What would you do? What do you think? I'm really curious for you, having done it yourself and kind of walked through that process, and now as a coach and consultant and consulting the work you do. What do you think about that? Do you still encourage people to go out and solicit a lot of friends or family or mentors' advice at those key moments? Or looking back, would you say that just added noise to the calculation and in the end, it really simply came back to you?
I would say this, absolutely go out and ask for that. Where I think people fall short is they don't synthesize it. They don't curate it. They don't process it in a way. They take it sort of like a cheeseburger off the McDonald's line and think they're just going to eat it. No, you like just take the one, the pickles out of there, and then take, I don't know, the French fries from it. This is the worst metaphor I've ever come up with, right? Like curate it. I mean, and here's what I'll say is, unfortunately, most people that are close to you that you're going to ask, first of all, they are well-intended. Any advice they give you is because they care about you and they want you to do the right thing. The bad news is they don't know the freaking right thing all the time. And they also don't know, I mean, most of them are not coaches, right? Really what people should do if they come to you, go to a friend, they should come back to you, and you know this, they should ask you questions, right? Like they should be more reflective versus advice. But that's not how we're wired. And I'm not perfect either. I mean, I've given out plenty of advice, but I would say it's not that you don't want to do that. I would say whether it's advice or just, you know, I talk to so many of my clients about this, people that have risen in their career have said, when have you ever stopped to actually curate and think about the things you've learned and put together your own recipe, your own thoughts, your own perspective? So that's my advice. Take it, but you got to then take it back and you got to do your own cooking.
Yes, that's really good. And I agree. People don't have a practice of creating space, silence, stillness to let their thoughts,
yes.
You know, I like the word marinate, but
Totally.
Since we're on a food metaphor, we could just roll with that. I don't think a McDonald's cheeseburger and marinate go together, but we can find a way to make this work. Erin, the thing that I find then with the engineering leaders that I coach is they really love what you just described. Do it your own way. And you know, the title of your book is amazing. The you do you-ish, you know, this whole, but there's a lack of belief that that's actually possible. It's like, it sounds great, Erin, and you found a way to pull it off in your company with the culture there because of these. And we can always come up with 5 or 6 or 20 reasons that it worked for you. But if I take that director of engineering position, or if I take that CTO position, I'm never going to see my family again. It worked for you, not going to work for me because, Erin, you don't know my company culture, or you know, da-da-da. So can you describe your experience or just help us to nurture some belief that that's BS and it's possible anywhere? Like, why should I trust that this is a true story?
First of all, I didn't work in Storyland or some fanciful place. In fact, my leader, because I was CEO, but I still reported up to an EVP of the parent company, was not authentic, was a sort of corporate, like she had been doing it the way forever. And what I'll say is that there is a period of time, whether it's micro or macro, so it could be on a meeting that you're doing or a project you're leading or, you know, business, where it's going to feel uncomfortable. If you, for example, say, okay, normally we do these projects and we always do a steering committee and we report it up and we fill out 17 templates and da-da-da. And you say, we're not going to do that anymore. I'm just picking an example. If you said, we're going to do it our own way, we're going to do it, we're going to cut out the BS, we're going to do it our own way. There is going to be a period of time of resistance. But here's when your leadership doesn't care, when you get results. So there was a period of time for a couple of months where my boss thought I was nutso, like just some of the ways I was negotiating things or doing things. I'm sure she was like, she has no idea what she's doing, and let's hurry up this executive search. But once you start showing results, which you will, because guess what? Everybody is craving you to be that leader that cuts out the crap and acts more human, and all the principles that I talk about around authenticity. You're going to get better results. Once you start getting those better results, they ain't going to give 2 hoots what you're doing, because that's all your leadership cares about. First of all, if you're I have a quote in my book. I think it's something like, if you're working harder, you're leading worser. You know, some of that, I'm just going to be tough love. Like, you're addicted to the hum and the buzz, and the fact that you think that you're going to take on an executive role and work more hours is probably because you're lazy and you're not leading enough. And I know that's really tough love. And trust me, I've been there. I am not perfect. But yeah, everybody has those constraints. But once you can get the results doing it a different way, and you can get the best, I mean, really, it's about getting the best team. Let's be honest. At the end of the day, I used to laugh. I'm like, it's one big popularity contest. Within the halls of Aetna, 50,000 people, I was constantly stealing the best talent. You know how easy your job gets when you have the best talent?
Yeah.
You know how much less you work, less you stress if you have the best talent. So there is an investment period where you might look weird, you might be working harder. But if you have the guts to say, well, it's either that or I just keep running on the same treadmill, and that might not work out either. If you have the guts to say, I'm going to do it different, it will pay off. But you've got to get
so brilliant. I want to put a giant exclamation point on this idea that if you simply solve the problem that you're facing by working harder, longer hours, that's actually the lazy way out, because you're not doing what it takes to lead and become that authentic leader who can then enable and equip and delegate and all the things it takes to let the organization improve. And the ego in me even curls up right now as we talk about it. I still want to go down that path because it feels good for Zach to know that I carried the banner and I'm the one who got us across the finish line. And I know better in my conscious mind, but even today, there's this little voice in the back that's like, I want to go crush it, and working hard makes me feel good. And so, Erin, that's like, we could do a whole nother episode just on that point. Let's get into the terms. The engineer in me, I love definitions and being precise about what things mean. And you do a great job of helping people understand what authenticity as a leader is and what it's not, and some distinctions there. Would you share that for me and for the engineering leader listening? When you talk about authentic leadership and being authentic, what does that really look like?
Back to the story, right? Like I come out, I have this epiphany. I was like, oh my God, I got to go teach this. And then I was like, crap, what is it? How do I teach something that's like fluffy unicorn doo-doo, as I call it? But I knew I didn't walk into work like I would walk into a pool party at my best friend's house, right? Like I knew that it was more than simply being myself. So I started to reflect and do research. And one of the things that's important to understand, the root word of authenticity is authentikos, which is a Greek word. And authentikos means to be genuine, original, and authoritative. When you think about, I see the word authenticity and you think of the first person that comes to mind, there is a more nuanced, complex. And so once I had that realization and I realized authenticity is not simply being yourself, it's also not synonymous with transparency. I get that question all the time, but well, Erin, though, can you ever be too authentic? Wink, wink. I'm like, no, you can't. You can be too transparent. Yeah, you can come in and talk about all the troubles you have or your relationships. That's not the same. Transparency and authenticity aren't the same. And so when I work with people, the first thing I do is really get them to understand not only is there a richer definition, but this is really important. People that are authentic, especially authentic leaders, and I talk to people both in leadership levels, and authenticity works for climbing the ladder, but especially in the leadership, authenticity is actually not about you. When you do authenticity, when you act with authenticity, you're doing it actually for the other person. For example, one of my definitions is exposing who you are when people least expect it. And one of the key principles is humility, and where you purposely use humility. I did it at the beginning. I purposely will always use humility when I first meet somebody. I talked about failing my actuarial exams. Why? Not because it makes me feel better and get something off my chest, because I know it's the best way to connect and gain trust with you. Because as soon as somebody fesses up that they're terrible at this, or they failed at that, or they, whatever, fell on the way into the interview, all of a sudden your little trust, radar starts to like calm down. And you're like, well, if they're told me that, they're probably not hiding anything else.
Right.
And so everything I teach about authenticity is actually that you are doing things to buck the norm, but not because it makes your life better at first, but because it creates connection and trust and inspiration with others. And then guess what happens? It all comes back to you because you've created that trust connection, which leads to better results, relationships, etc. And so that was sort of like my moment where I realized this actually is teachable. There are specific things that I used to do and that others that I watch, and when I do workshops and stuff, we share tons of examples and videos where you're like, oh yeah, like that is authenticity, but it's not just them being themselves. And so then what I did is you really curated, go figure, I cooked up a framework that I call the 6 principles of strategic authenticity. And it has an acronym, HUMANS. And I'm going to be really clear. Each of those words are not freaking adjectives. They are action verbs. Like they're not like, I always drives me nuts. I'll read like a Forbes article on authentic leadership. And it's like, it means that you have to be caring and servant. And it's like, snooze fest and not actionable. And like you put down the article and you're like, I'm not doing anything different. So the way I teach it with these 6 principles of HUMANS are literally actionable things where you use each of these principles to start to rewire. They're training wheels, right? It's not like I always tell people, like, I hope you forget about humans a solid few weeks, a month into after reading the book or doing one of my workshops, it's training wheels, but it's training wheels that are very tangible so that it rewires. You get out of that zombie mode of doing the corporate stuff and not bucking the norm and not leading with authenticity. And then once you've practiced with those, then you've actually changed, and you've changed your addiction. You haven't changed who you are. You've actually just changed an addiction to being somebody that is more authentic.
The engineer in me relates really well with the challenge you described about that Forbes article. And we tend to look at things in ideas, in principles, in theology, ideology type of terms. And engineers love to think, you know, we're in our heads a lot. And so it's easy to take something like authenticity and break it down into first principles that are these ideas rather than actions. And where we often fall short is that translation of a great idea like humility, being human with someone else. I love that the 6 actions of authenticity spell out humans, because it's, I mean, it is a human to human
finagling,
thing.
But it mostly works.
That's all right. That's perfect. And so I think just that recognition that, for one, it's an act, it's a behavior that you are intentionally choosing, but also to recognize that if we get caught in the principles of this in our heads, that's really not any different or better than all the BS we're trying to let go in the first place. We just added a new layer of posters on the wall in the executive wing. We just pasted over the old poster with a new poster. And so what have you found is the key to getting into the action? What helps people take it out of the conceptual and really begin, I love you said, that creating a new addiction to the kinds of behaviors that are authentic? How do you get someone started? What's the catalyst to action?
You know, it's funny, there's literally one catalyst, and I think it's the most ridiculous, but people love it. And forgive me if anybody, you know, is sensitive to the addiction metaphor. I mean no harm, but I truly believe, like, it is, I don't like to change people. I would change their addiction, and then they start to just watch and observe. And actually my gateway drug that everybody loves is changing your out of office message. Out of office messages are the most crusty old, like, I will be out of the office, I will get back to you as soon as I can. You know, some of the passive aggressive too, like, I might not be as quick to respond. Well, no, you should respond, right? Like, you know, here are the people. And it's also such a missed opportunity. I mean, unfortunately, your out of office probably gets 100 sends a day plus, depending on how many emails you get. And so that's actually one of my favorite gateway drugs. And some people are really bold and brave, and some people just add a little human language. I had one woman, a corporate workshop, she changed it to, like, diamonds are a girl's best friend. I'm out on the baseball diamond where you find me most, you know, watching my son play baseball. And what it does is, authenticity in general, this is a microcosm, it doesn't just unlock something in you that's kind of dormant, it unlocks it in others. So as soon as somebody sees that out of office, one, they know more about you, and they're like, oh, but then they're like, it triggers them, like, well, if they're changing this crusty old thing that we've been doing, like, what else can we do? And so I actually have exercises. We do things like an intriguing intro. I have a glowing through the motions exercise instead of going through the motions. We have a whole narrate is one of them. So we work on building your story library. But I've really found, like, the underdog push on the swing is this stupid out of office. I've had senior executives. I had this one senior executive. He's in his 60s. He is a SVP at a major consulting firm. That guy could not have been more proud. He's sent me like 2 or 3 of his out of offices since we did work at his company. And he's just, like, so proud of it. And this guy's been around the block forever. So, yeah, that's usually the place it starts.
I think that's amazing. But it speaks really powerfully to the point, Erin, that what we're seeking to do is disrupt a pattern in people's thinking and the culture, and allow someone an opportunity to show up and be present as themselves fully, again, where you least expect it. It's like the out of office message, you always expect that exact same Google default message. What a cool idea. So I would challenge the engineering leader listening to this, go make that change if it feels authentic for you to do so, or find one that is a little moment, an opportunity where you can show up as yourself. Erin, there's 1,000 questions I want to explore, because this is such a big concept and it's so fun, but I actually would love it if you would tell us, maybe it's a story or a couple of examples. We talked about when you start getting the results from being this way, then all that discomfort and initial resistance to it starts to wash off, and it becomes a lot easier, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to create in engineering and in business, is the meaningful result for the bottom line and our customers. So can you just describe, how authentic leadership changes the results?
Yeah, I'll give a story. I was newly into this interim CEO position, and the company had been struggling financially. And I think our largest vendor partner that we paid, millions of dollars to every year, came to us. And well, actually, they didn't come to us. Our procurement area at Aetna was like, you got to get that on a new contract. It's on an old rickety shickety pre-acquisition contract. You've got to get it on our industrial strength, Gestapo contract. And as you can imagine, the vendor was like, yeah, we can do that, but you're going to have to pay more. It's so much more restrictive. Like your contract's got all these, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, we were just so fragile financially. I'm like, we can't afford, we're not going to meet our plan this year already. We cannot afford an increase, but I've got procurement here. Your predecessor already didn't do it. You got to do it. And I remember my first meeting with their senior executive from the other company. And I'd never took a negotiating class. I was 42 years old. I wasn't this super strategic, I know I'm going to go in with this in my pocket. So I went into the meeting, and I remember just sort of naturally saying to him, hey, what's important to you in this negotiation? And he wasn't expecting it. So what happens when they're not expecting it? They tell the truth, right? There's no time to plan. And he was like, well, our company's going to go IPO, and we've got a lot of contracts that are up for renewal. And basically I teased out that a long-term contract would mean a lot for him. And he turned the question back on me, which I also hadn't prepared for, because I didn't prepare to ask him. And out of my mouth, I was like, look, our financials are struggling, and I'm also interim CEO. And if I can negotiate a good deal here, I have a good shot at becoming the CEO. And I was like, as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh my freaking God, Erin.
I can't believe I just said that.
You didn't really literally tell him. But what happened after that, Zach, is when he heard that, he liked me. We had a relationship. I had worked with him before. I just wasn't at the same level. And he was like, wow, I like you, and I want to see you be CEO as well. And we went through about 3 or 4 months, because it was business, and then we had the procurement overlords and duking it out. But he really fought for us. And in the end, Zach, they ended up giving us a 10% lower rate than we had before, and where they were going to actually increase our rates. And so, that's just an example where it is kind of a popularity contest, and not a surface level popularity contest, but a deep one in which the respect that he had, one, by asking the question, wanting to give him what he wanted, but also by just being open and honest. And humans want to help other humans. And when we had a good view that contract was going to go well, that was one of my first wins, where my boss, who thought I was nuts, was like, this is really good.
Nice
and
job.
Then we had another big negotiation, and then we had some other things. And then I would also just go back to, guys, it's a talent. It's a talent game, period. End of story. It now more than ever, when you are known as an authentic leader, a whatever synonym, approachable, genuine, someone they can trust, word gets around very quick, especially in this day and age. Everybody's like, okay, I need to leave, but I'm not leaving unless I go to a good culture, good leader. And once you have that, and once you're willing to clean up after parties with people, dance with people, my emails, corporate comm, I had this corporate comm guy, and they would do reorgs, and they'd have to write everything. I said, no. He did a draft one time. I honestly don't understand half the words you just said. How is my team going to do it? I literally couldn't understand what he was saying. So I wrote it. I wrote it because my team knew my voice. And so I just looked for those places where they would expect a corporate comm that they would never read, and instead just do something a little different. And then people don't want to leave you. People want to come working for you, and the results.
This is an awesome example. And I can echo the talent war, the game that's being played and winning the talent war right now. If you want to win that game, what Erin is saying, engineering leader, listen, this is so true. I've coached one-on-one with hundreds of engineering leaders around the world, and can say one of the consistent themes, if they're exploring a new opportunity, they're all asking, how will I be able to find out if this is the right culture and the right fit? Everybody's asking that question. If you have the kind of reputation that Erin's describing, that is a massive advantage. My clients talk to my other clients about, hey, this is a great company for these reasons, and I love my leader, and everybody would want to work here. So
and I just
awesome.
have to add in here, I have to add, because it's an engineering group. Up till like a few months ago, I was kind of making all this stuff up. But we actually did a research project. I don't even know if you know that, Zach, but we launched the impact of authenticity in the workplace. We did a national study, over 1,100 respondents, plus or minus 2.985% credible. And we looked at number of things. We looked at, is your leader authentic or not? And then we extrapolated and that looked at things like trust, followership, the correlations. I mean, one example, we asked, how much is authenticity practiced in your organization? And we gave them a Likert scale, very often, whatever, 5-point scale. And then separately, like 10 questions later, we asked them, do you think you'll be working at your company 2 years from now? The people at the top of the Likert scale that said it's, always practiced, 92% said they would be. Then it went down to like 80 some percent, 65%. And those where it's not practiced, it was 40%. The correlation of, would you follow your manager if they went elsewhere? Authentic managers, it was 4 times more likely. Trust was 4 times higher. So like data guys, the sounds fluffy, but shows that, I like to call it the ROI is there, the ridiculously obvious idea has been proved.
The ridiculously obvious idea. Oh, that's brilliant. Erin, this is so good. I'm excited to see where you take us to land the plane today around this idea of authenticity. And it really does connect to what we do in coaching and what these engineering leaders are doing every day out there getting the work done, that in our lives and our work, the questions we ask lead and answers follow. So if we want better answers, let's ask better questions. So if the engineering leader who's been listening to this conversation wants more of that authentic leadership in their life, what would be the question you would lead them with today?
Oh my God, it's so freaking simple. Here it is. What are you sick of? Or what do you want more of? Then give that to people. We are stuck in this disease that we think we're the only ones that are sick of the racy documents or sick of this PowerPoint process or sick of the town halls that go through the 5 different bullets the same every time. What are you sick of? What are you craving? Literally sit in that seat and then reverse it and go change it up. Everybody else is craving it.
I love that.
That's
I love that. You are not alone. If it's true for you, it's true for the team. Get
hashtag
going.
Not special. I always say hashtag you're not special. Everybody wants it.
Well, Erin, I have a hard time believing that you're not special, but this conversation has been hashtag special for me. I can't thank you enough. So if people want to find more, they want to hire you, bring you into their organization, get connected, where can people go to get more Erin in their life?
Yeah, my website is beauthenticinc.com. It's just the letter B, authentic.inc.com. Find all kinds of crud there, all kinds of authentic stuff. So whatever floats your boat, hopefully we can help push you along.
So for everybody who wants to see Erin dance in that GIF, please go visit the website immediately. It will not be a waste of your time. And I can't speak highly enough about the power of the work that Erin and her team are doing in companies. And it could be yours if you need this, or if you need coaching, please connect with her. It's amazing. I mean, I feel that energy of authenticity and trust building just in chatting with you, Erin. So, I mean, it clearly works, and everybody, I encourage you to go out there and plug in with Erin. All those links will be in the show notes. You know where to find those at thehappyengineerpodcast.com. Erin, thanks again for making time, your generosity, the value you gave us today. It's just been awesome.
My pleasure. It's great to be with you guys.
Hello, my friend. Zach White here again, and I wanted to let you know that's all we've got for this episode of the Happy Engineer Podcast. Thank you so much for investing your time with me today. It is an absolute pleasure to be able to bring you this content. Just as a reminder, it would be amazing if you would subscribe and share this episode with any other engineers you know who may benefit from this. And if you're like me, I hope that you'll take some notes and, more importantly, take action. In our audio version of the podcast on Apple Podcasts and any place that you go to find podcasts, there's a little more content from me about this episode in the debrief. If you really want to hear about how to put this into action, I'd encourage you to go grab that. But thank you for joining us for the video version of our interview today. And again, can't thank you enough for helping us to get the word out about the Happy Engineer podcast and what we're doing. If there's any way we can serve you, would love to do that. Go find us at oasisofcourage.com or reach out to me on social media at Oasis of Courage. And don't forget again to subscribe and click the bell to have notifications of upcoming releases of new episodes of the podcast. As always, I want to leave you with this. If you stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to grow. So let's crush comfort, create courage, and let's do this.